On today's Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast, we're going to get into the Vancouver Canucks preview coming up here. Plus, there's a little bit of wild card creep going on for the Utah Hockey Club, and special teams has been key lately. That power play is really heating up. All that and more coming your way with Robyn and I in just a moment on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alongside longtime team analyst Robyn Leaño, I am former NHL voice Tom Callahan, and together we present to you the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every single day as we take you through the latest and greatest what's going on with the UHC. And we've got a Vancouver preview on tap today. The Canucks coming to town here, a rare Wednesday night game. Don't get too many of those. Plus, Robyn, we're going to get into some wild card creepage in the standings here. And the special teams has been very important. I'm even going to throw in a note on my boy Kevin Stenlund because, I love that guy. So, you know what? Maybe that might be my player jersey at this point. He's kind of my player man crush. I just love the guy. We'll talk about him. We'll get to all that.
I mean, I don't blame you.
There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like. And you know what? There's a lot to like about the way they've been playing lately. 4-0-1 in the last 5. Utah's got points in 8 of 10 and kind of turning a bit of a corner. Now, they had to take some tough losses to get here, and they went through, I'll just call it an abysmal stretch of hockey. There was a point going back a couple weeks where you had the head coach and the leadership group questioning where the heart was for this team, where the effort was, where the spark was. And, words like unacceptable were being thrown around, and wondering if this team had in itself the ability to pull themselves up by the bootstraps or the skate laces, as it were, and get it going again. And despite the injuries, Robyn, which again are a factor, not an excuse, but look, it's the truth. They're dealing with that. But they've done a nice job in righting the ship here. And I really think that this shows an awful lot of character for this team.
It definitely does, and I think it speaks volumes to the coaching staff and to the leadership group on figuring out what potentially what was going on wrong and addressing the issue, talking to the team, fixing it together as the team, because there were a lot of issues. There were so many issues, and you said it was unacceptable, and I think even you and I were kind of pointing out a lot of it had to do with it. It seemed like the team during however long of a stretch of a period, depending on the game we were talking about, would just take a nap, and all of a sudden, instead of after leading 2-0, it's all of a sudden 4-2. The other team ahead. Like, it's all of a sudden what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple of minutes of that is death. In the NHL, teams are so talented. Everybody, 1-32, all very talented. So want to let everybody know today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to Join Built, that's BILT, joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Robyn, as we come into this Vancouver game, the team's been playing very well on the road. We talked about this in a couple episodes here this week. Not so well at home. So Utah Hockey Club is 13-11-5, which is above what people are starting to call NHL 500, which I think is interesting. The Sharks 11-16-5. And as I was reading through the notes about the Sharks, I completely forgot that the Sharks beat Utah for their first win of the season 10 games into it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
I can't forget about that one, Tom, because that was, to me, I think that was, even though Utah had a number of losses up until then, to me, I had considered that their worst, one of their worst losses of the season at that point, right? Because they were up against the Sharks, and all of a sudden and they had the collapse. Because we thought that should have been a perfect bounce back game for the team, right? We told them, like, hey, that team, like, you have to beat the Sharks. Like, don't underestimate them. Literally just take care of business, show who's the better team. And Utah fell asleep, and so that's why to me that that game will just live infinitely in my head. It will live rent free in my head.
Yeah, that you're not showing that on the highlight film. That's for sure. When you turn around and talk about the things that were good and bad about the start of the year, that one's not going to be on there. But you know what? They're different teams now, and it's interesting. The Sharks have kind of started to get better.
Yeah,
not great, not good, but better. And I suppose when you go over to start for any length of time in your season, there's nowhere to go but up. But you know what? Since that, they are like a game or two above 500. Now their record is not obviously how poorly started.
And you can just be a generic hockey fan to note that the team, even though they might not be winning all their games, they've become a more fun team to watch recently. Because they're not like I said, it looks like that team's having more fun. I think to me, because even with their losses, I feel like they're just it's get that mean, which I give them credit for. Even though they're still a basement team.
Well, they've got Celebrini, who's always fun to watch because you want to see what he's going to do. And then the other thing I think that's exciting about the Sharks is even if they don't win, they're starting to get points. So they're playing close games. And close games, again, speaking to a generic fan of the NHL, if you're flipping around looking for a West Coast game and you're not too invested in any of the teams that are playing, you're probably going to pick the closest game. That might be the most entertaining for you to watch. So I think the Sharks check a couple of those boxes. But Utah, again, to me, it's about beating the teams you can beat when you can beat them, about putting them away. They've started to get better about that.
Yeah.
And part of that is the start. So in the last 11 games, 10 of those games, Utah has not allowed a goal in the first period. And to me, that is a massive improvement.
Yeah. Honestly, I think even more so, the most important, and this was something I talked about during the Coyotes era, is the Coyotes had this thing where if the first score against happened within the first 10 minutes of the game, the team had like a 80% chance of losing that game. It was wild. It was an insane amount. I was like, you have to be kidding me. That is insane. Yeah. We're seeing what it seemed like we're seeing a lot of the same thing is you don't want the team to score first early. And not only that, but as you mentioned, in that last amount of games, the first team isn't like the opponent isn't even scoring in the first period, which is a good thing. That's going to help get this team the momentum that they need, the confidence that they need to fight for the rest of the game.
I think too, coming up against a team, look, the Canucks are no pushover. They're just above you in the standings. Robyn, remember all the way back to the beginning of the season, I said that I didn't have all of the confidence in Vancouver because we didn't know who they were going to be.
Right.
Well, they are getting better, and they did get Thatcher Demko back, which automatically makes them better, but he's been in and out of the lineup for the last couple of years for various injuries. But this is still a really good Canucks team that is still capable of putting the puck in the net. They haven't shown themselves to be as capable of keeping it out. But again, now with Demko, I feel like that's going to improve. But here's the wild thing about the Canucks. They're sub 500 at home. Let me know if this sounds familiar to you. They're sub 500 at home, but 10-2-1 on the road. So these guys get it done away from the friendly confines of British Columbia for whatever reason.
10-2-1. I felt like we had just talked about this earlier. Wow.
It wouldn't have anything to do with Utah being 4-5-3 at home and 10-6-2 on the road, would it? What's going on? Why is it not hard to win on the road anymore in the NHL? When did that start?
Honestly,
I don't get it.
It is a good, interesting thing. Because I think what we're talking in the last decade, everyone's like home ice advantage, home ice advantage, home ice advantage.
Yeah. Look at the Minnesota Wild. Here's another one. I mean, they're 8-5-1 at home, which is a nice mark. I get it. You're over 500. 12-2-3 on the road. The Dallas Stars are more in line with what I think the NHL should be like. 12-3 at home, 6-8 on the road. That's about what I would expect. Maybe you get that to 8-8 Dallas, you're looking pretty good. But I don't understand that. It's even the bad teams in the standings don't have horrible road records and good records at home. They're just, I mean, the Blues are much better on the road. The Utah Hockey Club's better on the road. Vancouver's better on the road. Colorado's better on the road. And I'm just looking at these straight up off the stat line right now. Minnesota's better on the road, and the Winnipeg Jets are dead even on the road. I don't get it. I just don't know when this started. It's a weird trend. It really is. I would love for somebody who is like super statistical analysis person to do a deep dive on that games, maybe over the last 2-3 seasons, maybe even try to go back further, figure out when this trend started.
Hey, Jay Fresh, if you're listening to this podcast, do it for us.
If you're into it, seriously, I would love to know, because I just feel like it's not as hard to win on the road anymore. Now, look, travel is much easier, although it hasn't changed all that much, but it's still chartered planes. It's still 4- or 5-star hotels. It's still catered meals. I don't know. Maybe it is easier to be ready on the road and not deal with the distractions at home. So that's an interesting one.
But you know what, Tom? Let's keep going on this preview as we kind of talk about, you know, some of the other expectations for this Utah Hockey Club versus the Vancouver Canucks as they set the face off tonight. We're going to get to all that right after this.
And today's show is brought to you in part by SelectQuote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Well, other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and actually cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. Well, SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Get the right insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/LockedOnNHL. And today's show also brought to you in part by Built Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. This is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks, and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. Redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, and even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. Access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. I love using Built, and I mean, I'm a rent payer too. I rent an apartment here, and it's easy to turn that rent into a reward. You're already paying rent anyway, right? So why not make it work for you? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Now that's Built, B-I-L-T. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today.
All right, Tom, let's keep going on this preview. Utah Hockey Club versus the Vancouver Canucks. Some of the expectations for it, maybe some players to watch out for. I want to put something, put one name out there. I think people are going to talk about because, I mean, if we were talking about a team like the Utah Hockey Club, which used to be the Arizona Coyotes, I mean, it's hard to ignore Connor Garland.
Connor Garland. Yes, a name that I know well. I love Garland.
There's those Roadrunners days when Garland was a Roadrunner was just so fun. He was also a great dude. He was a great dude to interview too, wasn't he?
It was. He was a good talker, and he kind of he understood that there's more to life than hockey, which not everybody all the time will tell you that they think is a thing, but believe me, it is a thing. There is more to life than just hockey. So Connor Garland's a great place to start to talk about. He's the third leading scorer on the Canucks team. He's a little guy, and he's got a big attitude and is not afraid to stir the pot, mix it up. He likes to get right up in your kitchen and just he's all about that. And, much like Michael Bunting, another former Tucson Roadrunner, if we used to say about Bunts, if he wasn't talking, something was wrong because that's all he does is talk, and it gets under the other team's skin. Connor Garland is much the same type of player. He likes to get under your skin, and he's effective too. He can score goals. He's got hands, gets power play time. So I really like Connor Garland. I think he's a pretty solid forward, and he's carved himself out really a nice little home there in Vancouver as far as an NHL career.
He really has, and I feel like if we're gonna kind of rewind and take a look at that trade, I feel like, and this is one of those trades in which I feel like both teams came out with a win. The then Arizona, now Utah Hockey Club took advantage, and now they have Dylan Guenther because of that trade, which we know is going to be it already has been and will be an amazing asset to this team. But on the flip side, Vancouver gets Connor Garland, who I like, as you've already said, given so much praise. I can give up so much praise for the level of competition that this guy brings to a team. I feel like to me, I think it's kind of rare to see that when it's true. Like, I feel like it comes out pretty even and pretty fair as a trade.
Yeah, and we call those hockey trades, right? When both teams benefit, we don't see a whole lot of those. A lot of them, and sometimes they just can't happen because of the cap gymnastics involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to see them when they do occur. But yeah, I mean, a win for both teams. Like I say, Garland has carved himself out a home in Vancouver. They love him there, fan favorite. I really think he's probably going to be there for a while. But other teams would love to have him, right? Just like other teams would love to have Dylan Guenther, who just signed a long-term deal to stay in Utah. So if I'm throwing out a name to watch, it's easy to go Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes. Those are the two big sexy names for me on Vancouver. But the guy I want to talk about is Jake DeBrusk. Yes. Where has Jake DeBrusk come from this season? He's got 14 goals. He leads the team with 14 goals in 30 games. He's just all of a sudden really started to emerge as a scorer. Half, though, well, a little less than half. 6 are on the power play. DeBrusk has really come into his own this year, and it's impressive. And he's shooting at about 20%, which for a lot of guys is not sustainable. But when you've got 14 goals, maybe we are finally seeing the blossoming of the talent that people have told us for a long time is coming with Jake DeBrusk. Maybe he's finally figured it out.
And also, as you mentioned, doesn't seem sustainable. But 30 games in, that is not a small sample size for an NHL season so far. That is over a third of an NHL season.
I'm telling him to shoot the puck all the time at this point, Robyn.
I mean, yeah, it's at this point. Like, if you have that high of a percentage, the moment that puck hits your stick and you're in the offensive zone, take the shot.
And if you've got puck luck, great. And if you're feeling it, great. If the net looks like it's the size of a barn, great. Whatever it is for you, you have to ride that. But I mean, maybe this is a bigger emergence for DeBrusk because as I've said, Robyn, there was definitely some conjecture about whether or not he was even really going to pan out into a good NHLer. Obviously, the bloodline is there with his dad, Louis. There was, I think, a fair amount of pressure on him to figure it out and try to get it going. And it's been a couple of years. And let's face it, some teams have just said, he's not worth it. He's not going to work out. But now he goes to Vancouver. He's having a renaissance there. So I'm actually very pleased to see that for him.
I mean, I love it when you see a player who they don't plan out on certain teams, but then they get a change of, they get the, the change of pace or the different scenery, and all of a sudden it clicks for them. everydayers of this show, long time everydayers, going back the last couple years from the Arizona Coyotes, know I had that thought of the revival of Shane Gostisbehere's career, where it seemed like his career was dead in Philadelphia. He comes on over to Arizona and has a phenomenal year, and it looks like, and it made Philly look dumb for that, for essentially like paying to give him away.
But he was playing so poorly in Philadelphia. By the time he endeared himself to fans when he first got there. They loved him, and then all of a sudden his play fell off a cliff.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, of course, that's the case. I mean, you look at what that, in that perspective, they had no choice. But because of the revival, it's like, oh my God, how did you let this happen? It was, I mean, I liked it. I enjoyed it because I was happy for him. I was like, you deserve this, dude. You deserve this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's funny too about a player like DeBrusk, Robyn? 2 and 3 years ago was 20 plus goals, challenging for 30. On pace for over 30 for the first time in his career this year in Vancouver. But the economics of the game are such that when you're a high draft pick with a lot of expectations, 40 and 50 points is not good enough. And because of where you were drafted. And so actually this is really worth explaining to some of the newer fans. Let's go into this, because if you're just looking at it on paper, you're like, Tom, how can you say he's not a success? Because he's not, because of his draft position. You want 60 to 80 points. You want a guy who's worth the money that then comes with having to pay a younger player in that role. So when he slumps to 19 goals a year ago, and Boston now has to make choices too. Don't forget, there's other players on this roster. They ended up having to pay Jeremy Swayman and back up the Brinks truck for him, and they had to make some other sacrifices. And Pasternak ain't cheap. You know what I mean? Marchand ain't cheap. These guys, they come with a cost.
Right.
So when you're paying all these salaries, somebody has to go. So even though 40 to 50 points is nice, it's not good enough for what you're going to get paid. And that's why teams move on from guys like that. And so to see him maybe on pace for 30 plus for the first time in his career is refreshing. And the fact that he's, able to really pick it up, and maybe he is finally going to be a 60-point guy.
Absolutely. So Tom, we picked a couple of players who we think that Utah Hockey Club fans should watch out for on the opponent. But now let's get to, we are coming up on a break here, but I want to hear your rapid fire 3 keys to this game for Utah to take a win.
First periods, again, still, I mentioned the stat earlier, 10 of the last 11, they have not let the opponent score. Do not let Vancouver into this game, because Vancouver is dangerous and can score in bunches when they get it going, which I think is awesome. The flip side is special teams. The power play has been going real well. They're 4 of their last 8, which is awesome. But they have also scored 4 or more in each of the last 4 games. So the offense is hot right now. So those 2 things combined, Robyn, can carry you to a win. I think that's awesome. And the other thing that's a key to the game to me, I'm not going to say the goaltending, but what I am going to say is cleaning up the front of the net. Vancouver will throw pucks and bodies to the front of the net. They're going to try to get in the eyes of the goaltender. And so make the first save, that's great, but it is on the Utah defense, and they've struggled with this at times, to clear that puck out of the zone, even if it's a safe play, glass out, boards out, alleviate the pressure, make Vancouver regroup and come back into the zone.
Certainly. And I feel like that's, I think that's a smart thing to live by. Plus, yeah, and I think also if you create the traffic in there, it's like you're not going to allow them to find the good lanes. You're going to get that, get those block shots, get whatever you can, force it to go back the other way.
Absolutely. Get in front of it. They can't shoot it through you.
Exactly. Well, we're going to keep going on this episode, Tom. Let's after a quick break, let's get to our picks of the game, FanDuel picks of the game, plus a couple other things as we close up this episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any other of your favorite sports. Maybe you're a baseball fan. Maybe you like the MMA. Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Right now, you can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pixmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. I love Prize Picks. I've been using it for the last, couple months or so. And I tend to make a lot of hockey picks, specifically taking a look at what maybe Utah's doing. Maybe I'll pick on Clayton Keller for taking 2.5 more, 2.5 more than 2.5 shots on goal in a game. Or if I'm picking Oli Mata to get more than 25 minutes in a game. So, or let's even go for some goaltending here. Karel Vejmelka, more than 27 saves in a game. So many options that you can do on Prize Picks. It is amazing what you can do. And again, you can do either more or less, depending on what you're feeling. As you build your lineup, figure out what works for you. Check it out yourself. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. So, Tom, let's get to, before we close things off, our FanDuel picks of the game, because this is, we haven't done it in a minute, I feel like, Tom. We have not done our FanDuel picks of the game. We've had some predictions out there, but we haven't brought up the odds in a while and share some.
Have we learned not to listen to Tom? Have we learned that yet? Do I need to keep picking for people to learn not to listen to me?
No, I don't think we'll ever learn. Anyways, let's go ahead.
Thanks.
Let's go to the betting lines. Utah Hockey Club, very slight favorites at a -113 money line. The Canucks are at +106. So it's a very, very close betting line here. The total points is set at 5.5.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, Utah, again, they just haven't played as well at home, but it does show where Vancouver is in the standings right now, that they've kind of come back down. Vancouver just coming in off a loss too. That's really interesting to me, but Vancouver's such a good road team, and knowing that Utah Hockey Club hasn't played well at home, and if they do have Demko, and Demko's already had a start to shake the rust, I would slightly be favoring Vancouver in this one. But I will say this, both goaltenders are playing really well. I know that Utah's offense has been going great guns lately. They, are susceptible to letting in the occasional questionable goal. But at 5.5, that means it's going to be more than a 3-2 game. That might be a tough sell for me, just because both goaltenders are so good, and especially if Demko comes in and really starts to shake the rust, I think that has the potential for a 2-1, 3-2 game.
And that certainly makes sense. And I think we remember having this conversation earlier this week, Tom, where we kind of talked about, took a look at some of the stats on the amount of goals that Utah scored when they're on the road versus when they're at home. They score so much more goals on the road versus when they're at home. And of course, you add in the factor of Karel Vejmelka and just the prep and the performance in general of both sides of the goaltender. Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, Vejmelka over for Utah. It's in it for me. I can't think of anything else than to pick the under on this game. To me, it makes the most sense. And I think it's going to be a really close game. But I'm also with you. I do think that Vancouver, it's at least to me, based off the odds, it's a slight more enticing pick to pick Vancouver. Even if I'm not picking them on the money line, at the very least, I'm giving them the points, right? They're down, they're 1.5 underdogs. This is going to be a 1-goal game, no matter no matter what way you slice it. It's going to be, to me, I think it's going to be close. I'm going to say this one's going to be like a 2-1 game.
Or 8-7. No, I don't think it's going to come to that, but I do think it has a potential to be 3-2. Now, what ruins that over-under is in a close game, you pull the goaltender and it becomes 4-2 on an empty netter. And that's the tricky part about a 5.5 over-under, because a 3-2 game becomes a 4-2 game. And it's just luck. as to whether or not it's over or under at that point.
That's what makes the over-unders very hard in hockey, because that happens.
Yeah. Like it can ruin a lot of things really fast. So, I mean, it could be close late. They pull the goalie. All of a sudden, you get one, block in the shin pads. Guy's out to center and just throws it into the empty net with like 3 seconds left. It shoots you right in the foot if you took the under. Makes you happy as all get out if you took the over.
Honestly, this is why I take the points. It's not as enticing of a bet, by the way. For example, Utah hockey. So Vancouver is 1.5 underdogs at minus 265, right? Like, you're not gonna, it's not a high value pick, but to me, I consider that a safe pick.
There are probably other matchups that if you're a person who is interested in, this kind of thing on a regular basis, you're probably looking at other games, because this one is tough. This is two very similar teams. This is a hard one to call. Utah could ride its recent wave of momentum. Demko could not shake the rust. And all of a sudden, Utah could be up 3-1 by the end of the first. So it could go a lot of different ways. And that's why this game is tough to call.
But also, that's also why I love betting on hockey, because like it gets you on the edge of your seat, because all of a sudden you might be pulling out some hairs because you're going insane, because it comes down. Like, it looks like you're not going to make it after one period, and all of a sudden everything slows down, and you're like, oh, wait, I might. Then the last minute hits, and all of a sudden you're pulling out your hair again.
Yeah. Actually, tomorrow's loaded. I know there's not a lot of games on a Wednesday. The NHL plays primarily Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But for a Wednesday night, listen to these. These are pretty awesome from what I'm seeing right now, and I dig this. So, you've got Red Wings Flyers, which might not be great, but should be close. Leafs Stars, that's a good matchup. Wild Panthers, that's a good matchup. Hockey Club and Canucks, that's a good matchup. So really, the only one that has the potential to be a blowout to me is Jets Ducks. That's a pretty stout Wednesday night. 4 of the 5 games, Robyn, I'd say are worth watching. It's perfect for the quad box.
Oh, I love when you can get the quad box on watching multiple hockey games at once.
Oh, me too. I love that.
Like I said, I can't. Sometimes I don't end up paying attention. I end up only paying attention to one game, and I all of a sudden, like, something happens, and I'm like, oh wait, what just happened?
Yeah.
How did I miss that? I still like it. I still do it anyways, because why not?
Exactly. Robyn, before we go anywhere, I want to point out a couple things right now, because the bullet's up there in the wild card creep. Just some quick things I want to throw out. The only team that has won or lost more than one in a row right now, 2 teams. Utah Hockey Club has won 2. Edmonton has won 5. The Oilers are awake. But 6-2-2 in the last 10. They are now 2 points out of the final wild card spot, occupied by, drum roll please, Vancouver Canucks. So guess what? This game now has even bigger implications. I know it's not even January yet, but Utah Hockey Club is hanging around where I said I wanted to see them hang around, the 9-10 spot. And if they're able to be there with these injuries and with everything they're going through at the deadline, I'm not saying they're going to turn into big-time buyers, because I don't think they're ready for that yet. Big-time buying is for teams going for a cup. But it puts them in the driver's seat to facilitate change and benefit from it, because they have cap space, they will have rental players, and they could still find a way to creep in over the playoff line. It could really work out in all facets.
Alternatively, too, they can take. I mean, like, even if anything, they could also choose to rent out a couple of their players, and just be like, like, we're gonna keep it simple this year. I think we can work with some of this, get some extra assets back. Not necessarily worry too much this year. If we make it in, great. If we don't, then, we have next year.
Yep. And there's a lot that it could be. You could see some boomerangs. Guys will come back in the summer, as you mentioned, because right now I think Utah Hockey Club is also not only putting its best foot forward on the ice, but off the ice. And that's what really is important. It's lifestyle. It's for players of families. Maybe it's, school choices for your kids, or places to live, or those kind of quality of life. And I think that Ryan Smith and this ownership group are doing everything they possibly can to make the Utah Hockey Club an attractive place to go, either as a free agent, as a trade target. They want to be on a guy's list of a place they want to go.
So maybe teasing Bukes that gets traded out again on a rental and then comes right back.
If he does,
for
that
the
would
fourth
make me
time. For the fourth time,
but that tells you what kind of player he is, right? Every team wants him because they think he's that piece that can get him to a cup. But then he's an important player.
But then after that, he comes right back to the same team that he started with.
Yep, but that's not his purpose. When you trade for him, you've got him for 2 months, and you want him to push your team over the finish line so you can, win it all in June.
It really is amazing, though. Every time I mention that, it's like that. I see the guy come back, and I'm like, you must love Clayton Keller. You must love Andre Tourigny. You got to love somebody on this team to keep coming back after getting traded away like twice.
It's almost a running joke. I wonder if he'll be disappointed if he's not traded this year.
At this point, yeah. Any final thought before we close it off?
No, I'm just excited for the matchup for all the reasons we just outlined. I think it's going to be awesome. And again, I mean, you win, and we could see Utah Hockey Club sitting in that 8th place spot, maybe.
Oh, sure. Certainly would be a really fun, really fun time. I can't wait. That's going to be it for this episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Give us a comment, a like, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us also on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at LO_NHL Utah, as well as on Blue Sky at Locked On Utah Hockey. I'm personally at Robyn_Leaño on Twitter and at Robyn Icetime on Blue Sky. Tom, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter at Callahan on air. I'm on Blue Sky at Tom Talks. So feel free to stop by, say hello, and talk a little hockey if you want. It doesn't have to be Utah Hockey Club. If you want to talk about something else, that's fine too.
Yeah, and of course, you can always ask us any questions you have. And if we'll answer either right back, or if it's something that we think could make a really good topic of the show, we can talk about it on the next episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode, and we'll see you guys next time.